What you're hearing is Hardie Fiber Cement Siding living up to its reputation as the siding that helps resist weather damage, no matter what Mother Nature throws its way. James Hardie knows how important a reputation is, especially when you're a home builder. That's why Hardie products withstand the elements better than wood-based siding, with styles to match their strength. Because when home builders work with us, we deliver our best so they can look their best. Protect your reputation with exterior products by James Hardie.
Blog Talk Radio.
Right, it's quite simple. He showed up drunk. No, he's a good friend of ours. He showed up before the show.
Which is, all good friends of ours usually show up drunk. Absolutely.
There's a few exceptions to the rule.
Name one.
And
you can't say T because that doesn't count.
Oh, come on!
He's drunk every time.
Fine, then I have nothing. So, but we were talking before the show, we got into a couple topics, and we figured, hey, you know what? We have a well-versed Democrat, somebody who's very intelligent and well-spoken. Liberal.
And for the record, I'm not drunk.
I'm drinking.
He's getting drunk. He's in the process.
He's in the process of getting drunk because that's what liberals have to do before they hang out with us. I don't blame him.
I don't blame him either.
It's just a different experience, and this one's preferred.
And the best part about liberal Jake is, and that's his nickname.
That's his show moniker now.
It is now.
The
Mr. X is sounding better by the minute.
The best thing about liberal Naked Jake is that he believes himself to be more of a liberal than he is. He's actually more libertarian.
Absolutely.
And he hates to admit it.
I don't hate to admit it. I just don't want to attach labels to myself that I myself don't fully understand. So the only reason I associate myself with a Democrat is because that is the way that I tend to vote in California elections, things of that nature. So it's a more definable title or label to put upon myself because it's representative of how I choose to vote when it comes to elected officials and things of that nature.
Now, we don't have an opportunity to interview most liberals because most Democrats will not sit in the same room as us.
It probably won't happen again.
I don't know why. That's not true. We hang out a lot, but we make it a point not to talk about politics a lot also. So that's
only because I'm uninformed, and I'll make sure that your listeners are aware of that I'm not as educated and I'm very ignorant to many topics because I choose to live in my liberal bubble. It's a pretty scary world out there.
Which is why you're liberal, because if you were more informed, you were in fact become a conservative.
Well, there's time for that. I'm still young.
You're still young. So what made you, now, I'm wondering if we can treat this almost like certain people who were put up to be Surgeon General treat firearms like it's a disease.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to go with exorcism. But
no, is liberalism a disease, and can we treat it through a disease process?
The liberal would say it's like trying to treat homosexuality, that they tried that and that was proven not to be something that was treatable.
The liberal says that guns are a disease process, so why would this not be a disease process?
Well, as an informed person, as a gun owner, as someone that's very pro-gun, I'm informed on this issue. And it's interesting you bring up the subject of disease because it's my personal opinion that much of the gun violence that we're witnessing, this person's using gun violence to injure people that aren't family members, aren't associates, but stranger on stranger violence. It is disease related. It's a mental health issue. It's not a gun violence issue. It's a mental health issue. Much like if someone gets in a DUI and they're driving their car drunk, the next day we aren't calling to recall cars or take away driver's license or remove vehicles.
Shouldn't we? Shouldn't we recall vehicles? Because without the vehicle, they would not be able to drive drunk. It's right there in the name. Drunk driving.
You aren't going to take this seriously.
I'm taking this very seriously. This is Backhead's Radio.
No.
I don't know if you understand that we take everything
But
very
people have been charged. People have been charged for drunk driving on everything from a bicycle, a moped, velocipede.
Look that one up.
Lawnmowers. So
golf cart.
It is strange, and I think
Hardy fiber cement siding is proven to withstand water, pests, and fire better than wood-based siding, and it looks better while doing it. Hardy siding has been chosen for 10 million homes and counting. See the proof at jameshardy.com. What you're hearing is Hardy fiber cement siding living up to its reputation as the siding that helps resist weather damage, no matter what Mother Nature throws its way. James Hardy knows how important a reputation is, especially when you're a home builder. That's why Hardy products withstand the elements better than wood-based siding, with styles to match their strength. Because when home builders work with us, we deliver our best so they can look their best. Protect your reputation with exterior products by James Hardy.
Pogo stick.
DUI pogo stick.
If that isn't a law, I'm going to look it up.
We need to
make sure
find
that happens.
We need to find that. Can we? You know what? I'm going to call.
Good luck arresting somebody on a pogo stick.
You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to donate to Senator YEE.
I'm looking this up right now, and we'll get to Senator YEE, but I want to look this up right now. California State Senator. It is. You can be arrested for DUI pogo stick in the state of California. The section I'm looking at it right here is 647F PC.
Got it. There's not a subsection P for pogo stick.
I don't know. That would be funny. I challenge any police officer that may be listening to this show to arrest somebody for DUI pogo stick
Is it cheating to carry a pogo stick with you?
No, I would
Provide that pogo stick.
And here's the problem: is I've been drunk before, and if somebody put a pogo stick in front of me, I would be so inclined.
No. You would try to jump on it. 'Cause really, that's the hilarity. What would lead up to that? The fact that if they could pogo stick their way out of there, then I think that would be their pogo stick to freedom. In fact, I'm going to get a pogo stick, label it Freedom Stick, give it to the next police officer I see, and see if someone can pogo their way to freedom.
We may have a pogo stick champion in studio with us tonight.
Ooh.
Do we have anybody that knows how to pogo stick in the studio tonight?
T, apparently T is, yeah.
T knows how to pogo stick. T, can we get you to weigh in on this? Well, come over here and weigh in on this.
You're going to have to step up to Clint's microphone because I don't have one wired all the way over there.
He turned beet red. Let me just take this picture. He turned beet red. It's so cute.
Well, he doesn't like to, advocate his ability to pogo stick and hula hoop.
Right.
Most of his championships are not.
They're not censored? Is that what you're saying? They're not part of the organization?
Tune into the Ocho, and you can catch
ESPN 8 the Ocho.
Yeah.
So what now? All seriousness aside, because you are educated. So
right. Seriousness is aside. We got that.
Seriousness is always aside. So for our folks that don't know you, this Jake is very, very educated. Went to college.
We don't need to see very, very.
No, we're going to say very, very because you actually went to an accredited university, which is a big deal.
Correct. University was in the name.
And you were a poli-sci major.
Correct.
So were you raised in a Democratic family?
Split.
Okay.
Democratic father, Republican mother.
So what made you go to the dark side like Darth Vader and
Essentially, both my parents had similar political ideals. It's because of where they were raised, and they were just basically went down those paths. And the number one reason I'm affiliated with the Democrats is because of where I align on my social values and the rights I believe that need to be afforded to certain citizens, things of that nature. When it comes to finances and things like that, I tend to be a little more conservative. I believe in a perfect. Well, sure. If you want to assign a conservative point of view to my idea of firearms, then yes, I would say my.
Well, it is because you have the progressive point of view that believes the Second Amendment applies to the National Guard and the government and the militia only, and then you have which they don't.
Now, please tell me what I believe.
No.
Yes.
Or you have the conservative point of view, which tends to be the Second Amendment applies to the right of the individual.
Fundamentally, I have the hillbilly opinion. The hillbilly opinion is that most of us just need Toyota Priuses to get to and from work. But this is America, gosh darn it. If you want that F-350 with a John Deere logo on the front, if you want to drive a Corvette, drive a Corvette. We all know you can't do 110 miles an hour on the freeway, but everyone can have a vehicle that's capable of accomplishing that.
Right.
It's us as good citizens not to do so. Same with if someone wants to own a race gun, a weapon capable of delivering rounds at a rapid pace so that they can participate in events or just have it for personal defense, things of that nature, then they should be allowed to own it because this is America.
Individual choice.
We don't legislate based on necessity and need.
Okay.
We have freedoms in this nation.
That's a very conservative point of view.
Correct. And that's why I want to clarify is I don't necessarily always agree with it. I have the opinion that maybe we shouldn't have Corvettes out there. People would die a lot less if they were driving vehicles that were only capable of max speeds of 60 miles an hour. But I don't want to live in that world. It makes us safer and wraps us in bubble wrap. But we're going to take our lumps along the way to have certain amounts of freedom.
So you consider yourself to be more socially liberal, and this is what we had some of our discussions. But what's interesting is we actually agree more than I would think in that. And we do differ some, just to be fair, but in terms of individual choice and rights, for example, gay marriage.
Sure.
Your stance on gay marriage is
that life is short and you should get to spend as much time with the people you love. I think that the necessity of government acknowledging some level of unity is important. If we want to use the M word and associate it as marriage, so be it. I was fine with civil liberties and civil unions, things like that, but I agree with most of the points of Democrats and of people in favor of gay marriage that it wasn't the same if you called civil unions. They want equal and identical rights to heterosexual couples, things of that nature. So I understand the motivation for changing the language to make sure that that persons are allowed to have gay marriage and things of that nature. I just want everyone to be able to have their right to seek happiness in their life and have the same rights acknowledged by the government that come with marriage.
Okay, and that's kind of the hippie liberal point of view with rainbows and flowers, which we love about you.
Right.
So,
you don't like rainbows and flowers.
We love you. Well,
even with a giant tornado behind the rainbow eating up Roseville.
Now that I like.
Breaking lives.
Yeah. No. So, but do you think that whose job is it to define marriage? Is it the government's job, or is it the church's job to define marriage?
The necessity is both. I think both have to have some kind of definition of what is going to be the union of two people. I don't want anything to do with churches. I don't want anything to do with how they define marriage. That's for each individual institution to decide. If a church or a group wants to deny someone membership based on that, based on their ability to have religious freedom, then that's great. I believe in religious freedom in this nation. However, I acknowledge that government has to have some kind of definition. You choose to say definition of marriage. They have to have some kind of definition for civil unions for two people being together for the purposes of tax code, for those kinds of purposes, just because that's.
And I've talked about it before, and we've said it here on the show, is that's kind of our take on it, is essentially, I don't care who, what, as long as they're of sound mind, legal age, and I've said it before, I think marriages in general are civil. As soon as you go to the government and you call it something that's love-based, how does the government legislate love? But if you call it
everyone in this room is married. We know that has nothing to do with love.
but when you say, okay, I need to declare that this person and this person share these rights, or share this property, or share these health care or benefits, if you will. Okay, I understand that. But when the government wants to step in and say, no, this is quote-unquote marriage, well, now you're saying you're legislating love. You're legislating an emotion.
Well, yeah, I would say you're legislating a religious definition at that point. That's the issue I have with it. And this is more the libertarian in me.
Taxes was feeling so stuck. Sitting in traffic, squeezing into a parking spot, all to squeeze in getting tax help during your lunch break. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert who does your taxes for you, while you go about your day getting real-time notifications about their progress and the most money back guaranteed. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Now Taxes is 100% free when you file in the TurboTax app if you didn't file with us last year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just do your own taxes in the app by 2/18.
What if I have lots of forms?
All good, all 100% free.
What if I had 3 jobs?
Still 100% free.
What if I once saw Bigfoot?
That has nothing to do with taxes, so still 100% free.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Now this is Taxes. See if you qualify in the TurboTax app. Excludes TurboTax Live, must start and file in app by 2/18.
Than the Republican in me, and that is this. I think that marriage, as set forth originally, comes from biblical terms and so forth. Therefore, I believe it's a religious institution. I may not necessarily agree with that particular religious view, me personally. However, if there is a church, and there are churches out there,
absolutely
legitimate churches that do recognize gay marriage, same-sex marriage, and if that particular church does, because I believe in freedom of religion in this country, I believe that church is free to recognize that. And if that church wants to call it a marriage, and they believe that marriage is recognized in the eyes of God, then that couple should be married. And now I agree with you in the sense of, for purposes of taxes and so forth, perhaps the government should be notified. But if the government is notified of a marriage from the church, I don't believe they should have the right to accept or deny it based upon the sex of the couple. However, if a church does not recognize that as marriage, I believe the state should not recognize it as marriage, and they should recognize it as a civil union. I'm okay with the state recognizing, for the same reason if you had an atheist couple, man and woman, and they got married in a courtroom or whatever, I believe that should be a civil union. I don't believe that should be a marriage. Again, it goes back to the whole, I believe marriage is a religious institution. So I'm okay with the state having civil unions and marriages. I'm calling them two separate things. And I don't believe that at that point you have the institution of marriage being destroyed, which is some people's concern, because if you have legitimate churches that recognize same-sex marriage, and other churches that don't. It's your individual choice of where you decide to worship, and worship at a place that aligns with your ideals. But I don't think it's the government's job to recognize what that marriage is or is not.
Right, and to come in as the liberal here, I'm pretty much 100% in agreement with you. That was largely my stance when California made its decisions to have civil unions and things of that nature. I felt that it addressed the issue in that gay marriage was in effect lawful and people could achieve the same level of rights as quote-unquote married people within the state. And then knowing numerous gay people that had civil unions, things like that, I learned quite a bit about what upsets people and things like that. Basically, that they didn't feel that they had equal rights because it didn't earn itself the same title. Even though they had, I didn't become highly educated on the issue, so I don't know if there were a couple sticking points, but largely under the civil union laws that gay couples were afforded the same rights and equal rights as married couples. However, it had a different title, and therefore they felt that it wasn't truly equal rights. Being the liberal, we don't like our feelings hurt, and when people are sad and their feelings are hurt, we work really hard to change that. And that's a legitimate part of it. Conservatives call it something different, but we don't like it when we've been wronged, when our emotions are hurt, or our soul has been torn out by the U.S. government, and that's when we fight harder just to change a word or two, just so we don't feel jilted.
And that's you bring up a very good contrast between where people consider themselves to be liberal versus people that consider themselves conservative. People that tend to consider themselves liberal, in my experience, and I may be wrong on this, let me know, but I think you just hit it on the head. They tend to argue more from the heart, versus conservatives tend to argue more from the head. And that's just, it's an overbroad statement. I get it.
That's very broad.
I'm painting with a very broad brush, and I acknowledge that. But typically, I don't think that's too far off the mark. Now, we keep bringing up rights, and that's a term that gets tossed out a lot. And it's kind of interesting because I think where we are as a nation today, and a lot of our political discussions that take place, there's a misunderstanding, not misunderstanding, that's the wrong word, there's perhaps a disagreement or a lack of understanding about where our rights come from, in theory, for the foundation of our country. So do you believe, and I know your religious views.
This is coming down to an interrogation.
No, I apologize. Hey,
no.
This is called Ask a Liberal.
Okay. Oh,
I think this.
I didn't know that this.
I think that's what we just named this segment.
That's excellent.
a chat with a liberal. Do you think that do rights come from natural? Do rights come from nature, or God, if you were a religious person? Are people born with inherent rights just because they exist in the world, or are rights granted by government?
This sounds like a quiz by one of my poli-sci teachers. So,
understand, I disagree with political science. I consider myself more a political philosopher, and we had that discussion on the show here a couple weeks ago. We have political scientists now versus political philosophers, and that's a whole different discussion. And I know you had poli-sci. I consider myself more a political philosopher, and we come at things from a little different perspective.
Well, we don't know that yet. My degree is in political science.
Right.
I very rarely focused on the science of the subject matter, in that my two specialties was political philosophy, ancient political philosophy, and then in direct result to some international and local existence. I'll skip on it. My focus was on terrorism, domestic terrorism, and war. And that's where the science comes in, only in the sense of logistics. Scientifically, what does it take to wage war? What are the costs? What's the 1 to 26 ratio of fighting man to support? Things like that. So that's where I adopted science, because it's a scientific method to invade another country, things of that nature. But when it comes to politics, I'm very much
a philosopher.
Philosopher, yes. Okay. Politically minded in that sense. So as far as inalienable rights, I very much believe in the Constitution of the United States, which says that certain rights are inalienable, and they are granted us upon birth.
Okay, so natural law.
Natural law, whether you're citing Hobbes and Locke, things of that nature. There is a state of nature, and the fact is that as a human being, I have certain rights, and I have the right to to my freedom in the pursuit of happiness, and to not have those rights infringed upon me by another human being. That being said, that's why I separate from Hobbes and Locke, saying just because you're bigger and stronger than me doesn't mean that you should have the right to infringe upon my rights to be happy and seek out what I want. I believe in the hand of government be that form of justice to affect everyone's ability to seek their own peace of mind and happiness without being affected upon by other individuals.
So the government's job is to ensure the rights, is to help protect the rights of others, not to grant or take away rights. Correct?
Sorry, I missed that last part. I'm having difficulty with my headset.
Technical difficulties. Sacco really needs to get this squared away. I know you ran away into the other room already.
I'm just shouting into a metal tube, and I'm hoping that it's actually going through it just because I don't have anything in my headset.
That's not metal, it's flesh. But
I thought it'd be bigger. I could fit my mouth around this, no problem.
That's Sean. I want to. Your thesis is, because I agree with this point of view, that it's government's job to protect the rights of the citizens.
Correct.
And I know where you're going with Hobbes. Locke and Blackstone's commentaries on laws and all those philosophers, I guess, were they understood that, hey, your rights end when they infringe upon my rights.
Correct.
So you can exercise your rights insofar as I can exercise my rights, but once your rights are infringing upon my ability to exercise my rights, that's where it ends, and that's where that whole separation of, hey, if you're bigger and stronger, you don't get to take what I have, because I have individual rights and liberties also, and that's why we have laws in this country.
See Russia.
Correct. And that's
right.
In my mind, that besides giving me public schools, which is a whole other separate issue, roads to drive on, things of that nature, that's the scope and purpose of government, is to do the things that the individual and perhaps the government contractor can't be trusted to do on their own. We need some kind of organization to affect that kind of change and affect the quality of life that everyone can afford to seek their own individual form of happiness, however they choose to define it.
And we had a comment in the classroom, or in the chat room, saying protect our rights, not enforce. And I would say that we have laws in order to protect the rights of, in theory, in order to protect the rights of everybody, and those laws do in fact need to be enforced. So there is a legitimate governmental purpose to enforce law in order to protect rights of others. Well, as opposed to, like helmet laws, for example. How ridiculous is that? If you want to drive at 110 miles per hour on a motorcycle and smash your head against the pavement, well, that's your choice.
I do believe we've gone too far we've gone from protecting individual liberty to these blanket protections and things just like helmet law. And a lot of that has to do with tort, and I think tort reform would be huge and really eliminate a lot of that stuff. When you tell McDonald's they can't serve coffee at 150 degrees because idiots dump it in their lap and burn genitals, I don't feel that's necessarily McDonald's fault when you know what a hot cup of coffee is.
Right.
But then the lawsuit happened, now they make their coffee colder. Not that I like McDonald's coffee, it sucks. But the simple fact is what you should have said is, well, don't go to McDonald's and put the coffee cup in your lap because that's your fault. That personal responsibility we've done away with more and more, and we've done it through...
It's always somebody else's fault.
Exactly. Through these safety, like helmet laws and stuff like that, and that's something that we need to really start to pull back from.
How long before parents start suing other parents because they let their kid go to school sick, and then their kid got sick, and then they missed a vacation, so they sue that family for reimbursement cost of the vacation?
Right.
How long till that happen?
No, I agree. It's not far away. It's ridiculous. I mean, down in California, in the Bay Area, you just had a school system that was so afraid to stop a kid from being a bully because of lawsuits that it forced the parents to go out and get a restraining order for their child against that other child because of lawsuits. The school essentially said, well, we can't really do much about this. Mm-hmm. We told them, we've asked them nicely, but because there's been so many lawsuits against schools for dealing with discipline stuff, that they've essentially backed off, and now it forces this parent to go out and get a restraining order from one 9-year-old to another 9-year-old. And at the end of the day, I think, and Jake, I know, I'm pretty sure you agree with this, at the end of the day, those two should, one 9-year-old should walk up to the other 9-year-old and knock them out. I mean, that's my personal opinion. If I was being bullied, I'd do the same thing. Hey, if I'm going to get beaten up on and bullied, I'm at least going to do my best to end it.
You're at least going to know you were in a fight. But they lose, but you're going to know you were in a fight.
Because school systems, and we've talked about this before, school systems have this bizarre tendency to overreact or everyone gets suspended. And how many times you see video where the kid's getting picked on, and then he turns around and retaliates finally, and they still both get suspended. What does that teach our children? It teaches us, well, it doesn't matter who's the victim and who's the bad guy. Everyone gets in trouble. So what we do then is, why should I follow the rules? If I'm just going to get in as much trouble now as I was when I was the victim, then I might as well go rob that store. Because it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, and I'm not going to do any jail time.
Exactly. Too much protection, and that's something we go back to.
I'm learning something about Jake here. He believes in the Constitution. He believes in natural law.
Mm-hmm.
He believes in, he believes government has a role, which government does in fact have a role, and we may differ as far as a little bit of how expanded that role should be. But our views are aligned in a very libertarian point of view. I think Jake's more conservative than he lets on.
Well, let's get back, because I want to talk about a couple things that are in the news.
And I think he's libertarian.
We don't like to blanket.
One of my largest frustrations is the need to compartmentalize and label things. All right.
But that's what we do on this show, Jake.
That's what we do with everything.
I understand.
But one of the things, too, that you have to keep in mind is we agree that we shouldn't have these labels, in the sense of you shouldn't be a Democrat, we shouldn't be quote-unquote Republicans, even though we're conservative, or libertarians. And in this country, as we'll talk about after the break, but we've been forced into this quote-unquote two-party system, where...
Don't get started on a two-party system. I've been fielding a lot of questions about this. As someone came up to me and asked me, maybe 2 weeks ago, asked me if it could be possible for a president to be a third-party candidate.
Well, good. This will bring us to...
What I told him was that you can't shoot that high. That question is, there's so much would lead up to that. The possibility of a third-party candidate president is a lofty goal, which I'm very much in favor of. But why didn't you ask me state senator?
Right.
Or lots of other things. And I talked about representative democracies in Europe and other places where the legislature is represented by the populace, so that 30% are liberal, or let's just say 30% Democrat, 30% Republican, 10% Green Party, 20% Purple Party. And therefore, the population of that Senate has to be that representative. They have to have senators that are elected so that it aligns properly with the population. Whether or not that can work for the U.S., I don't know, but that's how other places have figured out how to have multiple party systems that work and are representative of their populace. I don't know if that could happen in the U.S.
I don't know, and I'd have to think about whether my initial reaction is I don't like that particular system. I am a fan of abolishing all political parties. I'm a huge fan of that.
Why don't we do this? We're up against the break. So
Right.
let's take a break. You think about it. We'll come back in
I don't want to
three.
think about it.
We'll pick up.
I need some coffee.
We'll pick up the conversation of the two-party system with Jake in the studio, the House Democrat. We'll be back in 3 on the Sackheads Radio Show.
Sackheads Radio. Reactionary Speak radio program. Introduce a little anarchy. Upset the established order. Everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. Oh, you know the thing about chaos? It's there. Friday night, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, here on BTR.
How you doing? John Grant here.
Joe Montana here. In my football days, I knew the importance of a strong defense. Now I'm sharing how you can help defend your health against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease. Are you 50 or older like me? The CDC now recommends vaccination against pneumococcal disease. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at increased risk and over 6 times greater risk of hospitalization with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50. Schedule your appointment today at vaxassist.com.
Sponsored by Pfizer.
What you're hearing is Hardy Fiber Cement Siding living up to its reputation as the siding that helps resist weather damage, no matter what Mother Nature throws its way. James Hardy knows how important a reputation is, especially when you're a home builder. That's why Hardy products withstand the elements better than wood-based siding, with styles to match their strength. Because when home builders work with us, we deliver our best so they can look their best. Protect your reputation with exterior products by James Hardy.
When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcast on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberty, sex, food, life, the military, and more. I host military guests and work hard to make a feel-good radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on me, Tammy Jackson, on 405radio.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state. America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, and that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean the government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens. This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or follow my blog at conservativeoutcry.net. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Thank you, Rooster, and happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Rooster tonight.
How old is he? Is he like 172?
Well, it's kind of like a tree at this point. Until he's gone and we cut him in half, we'll have to count the rings.
Because we have no idea.
We have no idea. All I know is he remembered the Green Mountain Men because he sold them rifles.
Well, I actually think he manufactured rifles, and he'd been doing it for years at that point. So,
our good friend Rooster on Outcry Radio. Check him out Saturday night here on Blog Talk Radio. 347-205-9399 is the phone number. If Sacco can free himself up to screens and calls, or may take some in a little bit. Now, before we went to the break, we're talking about the two-party system. Jake was talking about representative governments more in Europe, obviously, because there aren't too many else.
Don't ask me to cite any, because I probably couldn't.
The Whig Party and all that.
Yeah, here you had the National Socialist Party. You had.
I'm squinting. I know this is radio, but I'm glaring at
my host. But it brings up a very valid point, because your constant theme has been you don't like the label Democrat, you don't like the label Republican, you don't like the label Libertarian, which when we discuss that at the break, you kind of
let me clarify. It's not that I for the listeners out there, the reason you need to avoid labels is because you want to avoid assumptions, you want to avoid stereotypes, things like that.
Yes.
And that all goes hand in hand. And that's the only reason I bring it up, is because I don't want anyone to draw any conclusions about me based entirely on one statement or on one label that's associated. We should have an open mind until you have a conversation with somebody, until you know for a fact that this is or isn't their opinion, then you shouldn't conclude to one. And some people have the strength and reserve to do that, and other people need to be reminded, and it helps to not have those labels to just facilitate conversation.
I think that's an excellent point. I really do. I agree with that, almost word for word, actually.
Almost.
I do. Well, you're always going to have differences, and that's fine.
Exactly. And labels save time. This is a radio show. Absolutely. Time is money. Let's just. So
we'll just keep calling you a liberal.
Exactly. I'm not shaking that one. It's fine.
But let me ask you this: if there was a group because you're not a big fan of the big progressive movement that's going on in the Democrat Party right now, this over-the-top, big government, in your face. Government solves all the problems. Expanded welfare, expanded Obamacare. That's not really your bag. You don't.
No, not whatsoever.
There's a fine balance between giving somebody who actually needs help, and then giving the house away, so to speak. So if there was a party...
Let's not say give the house away, because the Republicans control that right now. Giving the Senate away.
Giving the Senate away.
There you go.
Now, if there was a party that came out, like for the Republicans, the Tea Party came out, and it's that more kind of grassroots, it's that more back to Constitution, smaller government, more so than the Republicans are.
Crazy people in funny hats.
Depending on who you talk to.
Correct. And that's why
Was there a picture of McCain floating around here?
there's a tremendous amount of Tea Partiers that the movement's been bastardized, and I'm sure there's lots of Tea Party members that are very upset at the way the media, the liberal media, portrayed them, because it was fun. I mean, it was really fun to point out the absurdity of the Tea Party, and I use absurdity in a positive word,
right?
In that how accepting they were of a broad scope of ideals.
So I have to. A question just came in, and I love Iggy Mom, but you have just screwed everybody up in our fan base, which is awesome.
They're just spinning out of control.
Is the other guy a collectivist, progressive, liberal? Like, what is he? And this
Iggy, is it Iggy Mom?
Yeah, and she's
Iggy Mom. I'm Jake. Hi.
He's Jake.
He's a libertarian, but he refuses to say libertarian.
But it almost comes to that. But this goes to the individual liberty of he doesn't want to identify.
Right.
Okay. Great.
Right. No. I support. Listen, I support
absolutely
anybody listening. We honestly, Jake is a very, very good friend of ours. And we love him to death. And so I don't want to
get people on the show that aren't very good friends of yours?
Yeah, occasionally.
Okay. You guys got petty cash?
Actually, sometimes we have. Anyway.
No. I rifled through your papers before you got here. I see the respectfulness of your show and the you know.
But Jake. Yeah, you're a Jake. It's a Jake party. It's a new term that we're using in the political realm to identify somebody who doesn't want a political label on them.
Is it now called a Jake?
But votes Democrat, so they are now a Jake. It's kind of like a Jeffrey, and I forget what movie that was from, because Jeffrey's so nice, right?
Everyone's a Jeffrey.
Right.
I forgot what movie. That's good, though.
The furry wall.
Bizarre reference, but that's good.
Yeah, so he's a Jake.
Now, if there was a party...
Wasn't that Get Him to the Greek?
Yes.
It was, petting the wall. Yeah. Sorry. There's a lot of things bouncing around in this head of mine.
Now people are voting on whether you're a libertarian or an independent.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
But so you're going to be whoever wins the vote, just so you know.
Yeah, okay. You'll have to...
Now you know if I have to fill out any paperwork.
I can tell you from knowing Jake that he does not smoke dope. That was one of the questions in the chat room.
Yeah, does Jake smoke dope? Do you smoke dope?
I never have.
Oh, but that almost
not
puts
once in my entire
the
life.
libertarian
No, not really, because we have libertarian views about,
course,
but we have different views when it comes to...
I have very interesting views when it comes to consumption of narcotics, but we really don't want to go there.
Okay. I want to stick... So, if there was a party that better aligned out there, say, if there was an old Blue Dog Democrat party that came out, calling the Blue Dogs, something that was a little bit more closer to the conservative, fiscal conservative, the individual liberty, but the social values, would you align yourself, or would you call yourself a Blue Dog at that point? If there was something that was what you were specifically, would you be more apt to identify as that?
I would entertain the possibility, and this is something that we were discussing a little bit off air, that at the end of the day, I'm still pragmatic. I still want to affect change that's positive for myself, or the social change that I want to see, which is very little in this country, things like that. So at the end of the day, if there was a group of people that identified very much in the same direction that I did, I'd be inclined to align with them. But at the same time, I'm going to piss some people off here, but do you throw your Ralph Nader vote away? Because in our current system, whether it's electoral college or, that's been hammered out, that can you affect any change is the question. And ideally, and that's one of the reasons why I'm a Democrat, is I have to choose one way or the other, and it's just a lesser evil oftentimes more than getting the change that I want to affect in this country, or preventing the change that I want to avoid.
But I don't think, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you're the type of person to vote for somebody just because there's a D next to their name.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
But that brings me up to
which does burn my ass every single time I have to vote for, say, a state senator. And I make the conscious decision not to fill in that bubble, simply because I can't vote for the person that got the R next to their name. We could go down the last 20-some years I've been voting and figure out why I couldn't vote for that person. But I also couldn't just put a little bubble next to the D because I can't support her because of their opinion on it.
Sorry, I had a cough. It happens. It dries out a lot in this room. So
now, I just noticed this
you
guy I had here. There's a nice pistol grip.
Pistol grip Pelosi. You brought up a really good point about not voting for somebody or because of the party or X, Y, and Z. And you said it's the throwing away your Ralph Nader vote. Don't you believe, though, if enough people start to do it repeatedly, that then gains the identity? You might lose a few elections. And look at, I point to the Tea Party because right now
I'll stop you. Not do what? Choose to vote on some issues, but not because that data isn't really collected. If I showed up to the polls and
voting for the person that you truly believe versus the party, which you said you don't do, but you brought up the Ralph Nader thing. You're not a big fan of that, throwing away your vote, voting for that third party who's never going to. But it takes time. I mean, you look at we're 250 years in, and there's a reason we have a two-party system. 400 if you ask a certain Democratic senator out of Texas.
The world began 2,012 years ago. 14, I don't know. When did Jesus raise the dinosaurs?
But at some point,
it's conservative radio, right? So you guys believe that Jesus rode a dinosaur and started
like a cowboy. Now,
right?
I haven't seen the Russell Crowe movie yet. Don't ruin it for me. There's an ark and there's a lot of water.
But don't you believe that you said you wanted to affect change, and that was one of the big things. To do that, you have to start small sometimes, and you have to kind of light that fire. You have to do that grassroots thing. So wouldn't it be prudent to vote for that person, even if it's a quote-unquote throwaway vote, and start getting, because what happens, and I think this is what happened with the Tea Party, is people were afraid to vote for that third person because they didn't want to throw away their vote. And then all of a sudden that next election turned around, and instead of 500 people, 1,000 people voted. And then all of a sudden the word gets out, hey, you know what? Enough people are starting to support this guy. Our side might have a chance. We got to keep this going. We got to keep that fight going.
You know what I think, honestly, on this? I think, and we kind of started going down this road a little bit before the break. I think, now hear me out before you yell at me, both of you. I think that if we do
how long are we going to have to listen?
Do away with both political parties, including the vice presidential ticket, and just go. Oh, see, I could hear the sigh over.
I'm waiting for it.
And you know what? The top vote getter, the top electoral vote getter is president. The second electoral vote getter is vice president, and that's it. Whether they're both Republican, whether they're both Democrat, whether they're both whatever it is they are, whether you get one of each, it doesn't matter. Whether you end up with like a Washington Jefferson or whatever you end up with. I believe that's the best way to go about it, because then you don't have. I don't know. I think that you'll have.
Wouldn't it have been weird to see the Bush-Gore ticket in 2008?
The
stickers would have been everywhere.
I hear the Odd Couple music playing in my headphones right now.
Not voting for a ticket. It's true. You are voting for
the person.
And if you get the most electoral votes, hey, you're the president. Next is, and you're the vice president.
Right, and I hear you.
Away with primaries. Right, so you can have everybody infighting, beating up on each other. Hey, whatever it is they're going to do.
Right.
Well, when I graduated from liberal college, they didn't give me my crystal ball, and unfortunately, as I talked about, I'm very pragmatic about this, and I think a good government is a functional government, and that's one of the number one problems that I think.
See, I think a good government's a small government.
Small, but it doesn't matter whether it's large or small. If it's not functional, if it's not effective, then it doesn't matter. Whether it's a large Senate or a small Senate, the number one reason why I think the approval rating in the Senate and the House is so low is because they're accomplishing nothing. They're not satisfying either base because they can't agree to do anything because they're so bifurcated. And if you were to have a Republican president, a Democrat vice president, and this bifurcated group, then they probably couldn't affect any change or any government because that's how these suckheads work.
But the vice president does nothing but.
He runs NASA. And
he's a tie-breaking vote in the Senate.
Right. And but we also don't want to see people calling for the assassination of the president, so therefore that they can.
Yeah, but I mean, look at how it's set up right now. Right now, Boner. Sorry for all of our listeners. Boner is the third in line. So if they were right, listen, Obama has done so much to separate this country, and I believe people are fundamentally good, which is why we have not had, thank God, an attempt like that on the president. We're not a violent show. We don't preach violence. We don't believe that's the answer. At all when you're talking about assassinations and all that kind of stuff. But with as divided as our country is, I think people are fundamentally good, and that's why we haven't seen the attempts perhaps on this president, and we don't want to see that. We
of
don't,
course,
we don't necessarily agree with him politically, but he is the president of the United States. So I don't know that you would necessarily have that. Assassinate him, because then we would be in charge, because you could have that now.
Yeah, but I don't want Boner more than I want anybody else. Honestly,
you just said I don't want Boner on the air, just so you know.
I know, and that's going to be replayed at some point.
A lot.
But I agree with Jake in the sense that a majority of our top two tiers of government right now, you can even argue third tier with the Supreme Court as far as Obamacare, is broken. I think the president, the vice president are broken. I don't think that they're doing a good job. I don't think
it's because the
Senate
big.
I agree. There's too much going on.
And what I want to ask you is, what's too big? Because, for instance, what I see as being too big, and I don't know how to affect the change, is what is behind our government.
Okay.
Not the number of senators, not the scope and the depth of the reach,
okay,
but who is involved. You see the iceberg, but you don't see what's beneath it. And the economic substructure, the political substructure, when the president, the senator wants to make a decision, how many people are impacting that decision? How many people does he consult before he makes that decision?
Mm-hmm.
And when he makes the decision, how many people are then weighing in to change the next decision because they weren't appropriately represented in that decision?
So your question is, what do I mean by how big is the government?
Correct. I just want to understand.
So here's what I mean by our government is way too big. And this may be a complex answer, but I'm very interested to hear your opinion on it. We have a president of the United States that issues executive orders not to necessarily run federal agencies under the executive, but have the force of law, which have not passed the legislative process. You have an executive branch that is so overbroad. For example, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Education, all these big bureaucracies that issue these regulations.
And because this is going to be long, I'm going to come in with just little sub-points for you to address.
Okay.
The purpose of the executive branch, it's not a clever name, is to execute, to make decisions quickly and accurately as they're needed.
No, the purpose of the executive branch is to represent the executive function and execute the laws of the United States, which is passed by the legislative branch.
Correct, and that's why we might differentiate on what he's actually executing through those presidential orders, things of that nature. So we're speaking very broadly, and I just want to remind people that I don't want anyone to infer what either one of us are saying to a specific issue, because unless we're going point by point, we can both agree that sometimes the president, whether he's invading the country for 100 days or using an executive order, that is his purpose, but we can disagree on the subject matter of what he's actually doing.
Okay, we can disagree on. I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay,
so we'll see if we get there. So the president has a very specific purpose, right? He's commander-in-chief of the military, and he is to execute the laws of the United States of America. Period. That's it. He runs the executive branch. He he represents the federal government. He's the chief executive of the federal government. So I believe we've expanded government to now under the executive you have all of these different agencies. How many different federal agencies under the executive do we have? And how many of those are duplicitous? And each of those agencies, a lot of those agencies, are capable of issuing regulations that don't pass the legislative process. They're just regulations that have the same force of law and that impact people's lives just as the force of law does. And in the state of California, the California Code of Regulations, one example, it's an administrative code that carries a penalty equivalent to what their state law has as misdemeanors, yet it has not passed the legislative process. And on the federal government, so the 10th Amendment may allow the states to do that, but on the federal level, there's not that mechanism in place. And we have so many of these large federal agencies that have the ability through executive order to issue and to enforce these regulations that have the force of law without going through the legislative process. That's one instance of what I mean by government's too big. It's far too overreaching into far too many aspects of our lives, and decisions are being made by bureaucrats, not by elected representatives, or those decisions, those rules are not being vetted by elected representatives and going through the legislative process, and yet they are enforced as law, essentially.
Correct.
Also, I believe government's too big in that we no longer have the states represented at the federal level. The 17th Amendment was passed after the administration of Woodrow Wilson. Big time progressive. And I'm not calling you a progressive because I don't think you are. You
ask the pollers. Where's the poll at? Am I a progressive?
No, they're trying to figure it out, but nobody's called you a progressive because you believe in the Constitution and natural law. You can't be a progressive. But you have direct election of senators. And what that did is, so as our government is originally set up, you had the House of Representatives popularly elected. You were a poli-sci major. You know this. They represent the people of the United States. The Senate was chosen by the state legislators, 2 per each state. And in the upper house, they were to represent the interests of the states. Our founders were, as you know, were very, very big proponents of states' rights. Huge. That was one of the major things they were worried about during the Constitutional Convention was, hey, do we maintain our ability to have state influence at the federal level? So you have the Senate that was designed to represent the interest of the states, not subject to public election or public recall, but subject to recall and election by the state legislatures to represent the interests of the state. And then you have the president that represented the federal interest. And then you have the courts, which were set up, obviously, as the third branch of government. So when you had a direct election of senators, you took the representation of the states out, which grew the power of the federal government, because now you have this large federal government that can act outside of the interest of the states, that know how those decisions are affecting state business and commerce and so forth. And to give an example, Obamacare is a big example of that for me, in that I don't believe, if you look at 22 attorneys general brought lawsuit against the federal government for Obamacare because of how that bill negatively impacted the economies of their state, or how they projected it would, that would have never passed in a Senate that had senators acting with the best interest of the states in mind. It might have if you had the best interest of the people in mind, and you had a liberal, which you did at the time, a liberal House which passed that bill. And we're not debating the constitutionality of Obamacare. It's just that bill passed. But I don't think that the Senate, there's no way.
Frankly, I think debating the constitutionality of Obamacare is something that neither one of the three of us are qualified to do.
I would absolutely disagree with that.
Okay. Well, we could cite some of the, I'm just saying we couldn't do a fair representation of the totality of the circumstances. That is such a complex bill.
I absolutely disagree with that. And
sit down and read the whole thing. Then I'll just say for myself that I am not nearly educated enough, nor do I have the brain power to conceptualize the totality of that circumstance.
I disagree. I think you do. Just based on the individual mandate alone, I think you do, because the Constitution is what? It's a small, thin, little...
Right, but that's one of those things we agree about government.
Let's get back to the point, though. Let's go back to where we were.
Right.
Let's get back to the point. So that's what I mean by our government is too big and overbroad.
Gotcha.
And we have big government. And my definition of smaller government would be the executive acting within their defined powers without the expansion of powers. Look, I wasn't a fan of Bush when we're talking about the Patriot Act and all that stuff either, to be fair.
Right.
So I believe that was a large overreach of governmental power. You know, we don't give up our liberties under the guise of security, because then you end up with neither. And that's a quote from somebody much smarter than me, or a paraphrase of a quote of somebody.
Yeah, let's call it a paraphrase.
So, paraquote. So, a smaller government would be an executive acting within their constitutional bounds, actually enforcing the laws of that the legislature has passed, and not issuing regulations and so forth through their branches, shrinking down and really getting rid of a fair amount of those federal agencies that have that regulatory authority, and then having the senators actually represent the state. So that's what I mean by big government.
Gotcha. All right, let's do it. Let's see how it works out.
And I think, like you said, one of the biggest things that we
can
do
the first 100-something years.
So does slavery.
Depends on which side you were on. But, I think one of the biggest things that you bring up is, and this would help the budget so much in this country, is the duplicity. How many different programs, you look at right now, everything, I'll bring up the economy, getting people back to work. There are so many programs out there in the government right now that are getting people back to work, and they're all funded separately. And you have like 8 or 9, and their whole job is to get other people back to work in job education and stuff like that. Why do you need 600 people to do that when you could do it more efficiently with 3? And you're not paying for 3 times the programs. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed, and that's something that government has done more and more as time's gone on. It's almost, and I'll tell you, it came from the good old boy network, if you will, of, oh, my buddy needs a job, let me create a job for him by starting this. And it's a do-nothing job, and nobody will even know you're there the first couple of years, and then all of a sudden, hey, this falls under the office of the blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, we need to get him 25 workers and all this other stuff because he was hiding in the closet. That's something that really needs to start working away. And I think if that happened, you would see a lot more people have faith in government again, because you don't see what happened with Lois Lerner, where completely out of control with the IRS, targeting political groups, but because when it's smaller, you have more ability to check and balance. And I think that alone is a huge start that could happen right now with the government, that if we started pulling that back, pulling that size in general back, it'd save money, they'd have more control over their employees, which they need to. I mean, you look at...
But how do we do it? That's what you have to do to suck me in.
Well, you have to start being real.
You know what? I apologize, Interrupt. I need to address something in the chat room. Somebody in the chat room just said the Patriot Act was written by Joe Biden under the Clinton administration. And I want to make this point. The Patriot Act in its current form was written by Jim Sensenbrenner. And there were many other bills that were written prior to the Patriot Act that we know today that kind of led up to the Patriot Act as we have known it today. But after the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001, that's when you had work from both sides of the aisle being worked on the current USA Patriot Act. As I say, other things were incorporated into that.
It was a cut and paste job.
Right, it was a cut and paste job, but it was compiled and supported by President George W. Bush.
Yes.
And signed into law by President George W. Bush, written in that current form by Jim Sensenbrenner. So while yes, there were other parts that were written by Joe Biden and so forth, the fact that it was passed, put together under the Bush administration after the terrorist acts of 2011, September 11th, 2001, they own it. So I want to make sure, I do want to be fair that we are blaming the right people, but
you're blaming the right people. For clarification, the black helicopters follow you home.
Yeah, trust me. Yeah, no, my name is Jake.
That's why when we walk out, we often walk out wearing the exact same outfit and then sprint different directions.
And another question came up for the Patriot Act, been revised many times. Yeah, there have been several acts dating back to like 1970 something.
And even this Patriot Act, it's how it's been applied has been totally different between 2 different administrations.
Right.
This administration has expanded on it more, and that's not to say that the Bush administration didn't expand on it, but this administration has continued to expand on it.
Through executive order.
Through executive order, right, wrong, or different. Look at the NSA.
Hey, we're up against a break. What I did learn this hour is that I am not a conservative. I am, in fact, a Jake.
I think we all have a little Jake in us. Wait,
if you want a lot of Jake in you, come on down to the studio.
that sounded...
And there we go. See, he even has the same sense of humor as we do.
Anybody's welcome to call in and ask Jake.
Yeah, ask Jake.
This should be a Ask Jake.
Ask Jake. Our monthly segment.
Look, he just shook his
I'm
head.
only committed to monthly. That's awesome.
We'd have to sign a contract with you.
Yeah, and then we'd have to pay you. And right now, I don't want to have to deal with Obamacare. So 347-205-9399. We're going to be back at 3 here on the Sackheads Radio Show.
Hello, I'm Lori, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Dr. Larry Arnn on how the founders see God as the source of our equality and legal rights.
America's founders knew, obviously, that human beings are not equal in terms of strength or beauty, or in terms of intelligence, industry, or talents. They understood that because of such differences in talents and things like that, some people would be wealthier than others. But human beings are equal, the founders believe, in their possession of natural rights, such as the rights to life, liberty, and property. Today, many Americans reject this equality of rights in order to pursue equality of condition through redistribution, or spreading the wealth around, to use a famous formulation. This is destructive of liberty as the founders understood it.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. Join the national conversation on the Constitution at constitutionminute.org.
Hey guys, it's Sean from Sackheads Radio. I know I've said it before, check out our friends at conservativeoutcry.net, but I really mean it. If you want interesting and exciting political commentary and analysis, that is the place to get it. Different, always spot on, always truthful, never pulling a punch. ConservativeOutcry.net. Tell Rooster to get Bulldog back on and that Sackheads Radio sent you. And also, coming soon, the Sackheads Radio Forum on ConservativeOutcry.net.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
Hi, this is Sarah Marie Brenner. You know, we often talk on the Brenner Brief about the fact that there really needs to be an organization to help people at the local level who are interested in running for things like school boards, city council, and other local offices. Well, I think I finally have the solution for you, at least for you women out there. It's called Politigal Network, Politigal Network.com. Their website's going to be launching mid-August, but they're already on Twitter at PoliticalUSA. I encourage you to follow them and become a member. Their goal is to be the #1 resource for conservative women. So if you love freedom, liberty, the United States of America, and politics, check out PoliticalNetwork.com or Twitter at PoliticalUSA.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegance and quality.
Then Jake was riding the llama, and I was like, are you kidding me with the llama? I don't even understand.
I thought we had that tied up for good outside.
We did, but Jake was just...
Why'd you bring bolt cutters with you?
Well, when you see a tied up llama, you just can't resist. Okay, I set him free, ride him into the sunset. That's what us libs do. We ride llamas, we liberate them. We say, where do you want to go, Bao?
Yeah, you have to, right? Whereas we ride horses. I don't know if you're... Hey, let us know before.
As the only person in this room that rides horses, I'm offended.
And
that's not true.
Yeah, actually, I'm the only person in this room that doesn't ride horses. So
that's true. That is true.
They
ride him.
So I did. We had a question from the chat room in the last segment, but you guys were on a rant. I didn't want to mess it up too much.
And you didn't want to prep us in the break either.
No,
right? No,
why would I
awesome.
do that?
Yeah, why would you?
Just lay it on us.
Off the top of your head, Jake, 2016 candidate picks. Who would you like to see, and who do you think would be?
Well, now wait. Now, who would he like to see on each ticket, or who would he like to see win ultimately?
Each ticket, and then who would you like to see win,
and why?
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Not each ticket. Who would you like to see?
I don't like any of them. If anybody has learned anything from this conversation, then I'm dissatisfied with my government.
You're a Jake.
That it's a shit sandwich, and I just have to just chew
You know
up.
what? You sound like a tea partier.
Sound like a lot of things. No, I don't pretend to know that there's any one candidate out there right now that I see as my savior.
So
okay?
who do you think,
or the type of person?
Right. Who do you think is going to win the Republican nomination? Who do you think is going to win the Democrat nomination? We'll just go with that.
I don't know. I'd just be throwing lawn darts. That there's with the exception of some certain events in North Africa, Hillary still got a chance. It's possible. We're idiots. I'm not saying that she wouldn't make a potentially good president.
The best late night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Tackheads Radio. The best late night conservative talk show in America.
And in the West, where they largely, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Is this thing on?
It's every week.
What's every week?
It never ends.
I cannot wait until our show gets started tonight. What do we have? It looks like we have about 3 minutes before we start. Because I didn't see Sacco do a countdown or anything like that.
He didn't count us in.
Oh, wait, what's he doing? He's like, I think he's telling me to steal third. Didn't pitchers and catchers start? Is that what this is?
He did tell you to steal third. No, that's...
Was it steal third or was it steal second? Because I'm so confused right now. Happy Wednesday, February 19th, Sackhead. This is Sackhead Clint, across from me.
Sackhead Sean, thank you for joining us.
In the Central Command is Sacco.
Who's a little under the weather, it seems, this evening.
He has no voice to defend himself tonight.
Which is even better for us.
Which is perfect for us.
Seeing how brutal we are on a regular basis.
And what's great is he's got his mouth full of pizza right now.
I hate you, guys.
I'm sorry, did you say something, Sacco? No, go ahead, speak up. Use your big boy voice.
Come on.
I will destroy you.
Sacco, speak up.
Come on. I hate you. I hate you, he says. Oh, only here on the Sackheads Radio
We're coming live from the shop, Sackheads Operations Center. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. How's your week been?
It's going well. You know, it's following the Olympics. I'm pretty psyched about the Americans in hockey doing a great job.
And what's even the best part about all that is the Russian head coach was a player in the 1980s team when the Americans beat them and ended up winning the gold medal, if you recall.
Really?
Yeah, the movie Miracle Disney made.
Oh, right.
Was based on the 1980 United States hockey team. And no, you didn't. And the Russian coach this year was on that 1980s Russian team. And so I'm happy that he got to relive a moment from his youth.
Yeah.
When we beat him again this year.
Yeah, I'm sure he's just thrilled by that right now.
Yeah, a lot of people, they don't get the opportunity to go back and relive a moment like that.
I just want to know how he's going to make Putin disappear. Putin's going to make him disappear. I want to know how that's going to work itself out.
I'm pretty sure it'll work itself out, no problem. And what the Russian figure skater, the male, who is the reason that the Russians got the gold medal in the team skate,
right?
He injured himself, and so he was unable to compete in the individuals. And the Russians just went nuts. Even Russian government officials were calling him all kind of different names, and just poor guy.
Well, why would they do that?
Why would he quit?
No, why would they be mean to him like that?
Because they're communists. What do you mean?
Good point.
Thanks. That's a no-brainer.
Speaking of communists.
Yes.
Oh, no, wait. We already talked about Russia. All right, I got nothing.
You got nothing? I thought you were going to bring up something about Obama.
Hey, bottom of the hour. This is awesome. Tammy J's joining us to talk about she released the third part of her series, the 47 Bodies Left in the Wake of Hillary Clinton on the Black Sphere. So she'll be joining us in about 25 minutes. That'll be pretty cool.
Because we love Tammy.
We do love Tammy.
I thought you were going to talk about, speaking of communists, I thought you were going to speak about the Providence College, their Black Studies program. Has a new award. Have you heard about this?
I have not heard about this.
It's the Trayvon Martin Award for Social Justice. I wish we had a live webcam right now, because the look on your face, I like throwing little things like this out at you right off the bat when you're not expecting it, because the look on your face was priceless.
Why?
This is an award that goes to people who have shown leadership to, quote, challenging and eliminating racism.
Really?
And empowering others to seek social justice. That's a quote. That was an email from the College of Pain by the Daily Caller. And it just sounds like such a wonderful award. You know what's great is we have colleges naming awards after individuals who were shot and killed in self-defense. There was a whole trial. Our legal system was in play.
Yeah, but we all know that
George Zimmerman was found innocent, and we know Trayvon Martin was far from just an innocent little victim.
Right.
Like he's been painted in some circles. And now they have an award in his honor. You know, the only thing I can really think of this place just went crazy is if Hollywood were going to be making a movie about Cesar Chavez.
Well, I think that it's, yeah, it's going crazy. I have bad news for you.
What?
I'm pretty sure they are.
Yeah, but it doesn't have any, like, big-name actors. It's not going to be in, like, a...
Oh, it's not mainstream?
Yeah, it's not mainstream, is it?
I believe it is.
Yeah, but they wouldn't portray him as, like, because he was a communist.
Right.
And we don't celebrate communists.
Well, in California we do. Well, not we, but the state does. It has Cesar Chavez Day. There's actually a bunch of streets named after him. He's apparently a big deal out here. I honestly, when I first moved out here, true story, somebody said that to me real quick. Hey, do you have to work Cesar Chavez Day? I'd never heard of him before I moved out to California.
Right.
I honestly thought they said Caesar Salad Day. And I was like, you guys have a whole day for Caesar salads? That's insanity. And they were like, oh, it's Cesar Chavez. And I was like, yeah, that means, I don't know. We have Patriots Day in Massachusetts, where I'm from.
But why would you have that? That's a hateful, hateful day. You can't.
And it's not even the New England Patriots Day.
If you have Patriots Day, and does that mean the entire city of Boston, the entire state of Massachusetts is on a watch list?
For the day.
Just for the day.
We also, we don't, but Suffolk County in Boston, they have Evacuation Day, which is the day that the British invaded Boston and everyone evacuated out. You actually get a day off of that.
Well, why wouldn't you?
So, I mean, you get our holidays too. It's a little bit different, I guess.
That makes sense.
Well, I'm glad something does. Isn't that just bizarre, though, that we have a Cesar Chavez Day in California? Like, don't understand. Like you said, he was a communist. He was a little bit of a rabble-rouser, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
I understand that he was a figurehead for the, you okay over there?
What?
I understand he was a figurehead for the farmer movement, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's a lot of other people.
He brought awareness to his cause. Look, he really did care about the worker and the migrant farm worker and so forth, and brought awareness to some of their conditions. Which, right. I'm not saying he did not accomplish some good things.
Right.
However,
he was a communist.
He was a communist.
That's kind of a big one.
And another big one is some of the people he was fighting for were here violation of United States law.
Yeah, but, it's right in their name, migrant workers.
Right. I forgot about that.
So that's good. I'm glad, I'm glad we're covering all the important stuff in Hollywood. I'm glad that Cesar Chavez gets a movie. How about a movie about Benghazi?
Now, you know what? Hang on. I really like the fact that you said migrant. It's in their name. So why wouldn't they be here? Because it reminds me of the story. So I was out and I see this police officer and he's dressed in camouflage. And I said, hi, how are you? How you doing? I like your outfit. They don't like it when you call it an outfit, apparently.
I like your knickers.
Yeah, I like your knickers. Those are sweet. Those are speedy user. I don't even know what the hell he said.
Did you ever see Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah.
Killer boots, man.
I like your outfit. He goes, it's a uniform.
You're like, get up.
Yeah, never seen a cop in camouflage. And he says, yeah, I'm SWAT. Oh. Special Weapons and Tactics Special, it's in the name.
You're like, yeah, I saw the movie and the TV show in the 70s.
Those uniforms are better. There's a glazed old-fashioned right there for you.
Really?
Yeah, no, I bought it for you. I brought it in. I didn't know.
Thank you very much. I enjoy a good old-fashioned donut.
I actually found out where that stereotype came from. Cops and donuts.
Where?
So apparently, way back in the long time ago in the 80s, the only place open at night for cops that sit and like do paperwork or whatever, was donut shops.
Uh-huh.
So they would go to donut shops because they were the only place open and drink coffee and write their reports or do whatever paperwork they're going to do or just relax. That's where that comes from.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't believe that. I know where paddy wagon comes from because I'm from the Northeast.
And because you're a patty.
Because I'm a patty. So, I don't have... You alright, Saka? Saka, you're making noises in our head again. I don't have all the
underwear on right now,
and I do want to look into it on the show, but Flycatch brought up a good point in the chat room that the FCC proposed new ruling for them to broadcast new broadcast in real time or the new broadcast in real time. I have briefly looked into that. I didn't get it ready for tonight's show. I don't want to give out bad information, and I don't want to have. That's one of those things I really want to read through the entire proposal by them before I start commenting on it.
Is that the Federal Communist Commission? That was one of them.
No, I think
that makes sense. It's something he would create, right? The Federal Communist Commission. How can we best celebrate communism? Because they're our friends and our allies. Social justice, it's power of the people, right?
It's a social justice show. Hey, speaking of not social justice, but old communist countries, do you follow any of what's going on in the Ukraine?
No, other than the fact that it's on fire right now. Literally,
yeah,
quite literally, it's.
If you pull up, there's a feed coming out of a news site called Espresso or Pinko, or I think it's state agency.
Look, it's not burning right now. Obama just said it. There's a truce.
Oh yeah, there's a truce?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm looking at the live feed right now.
No, it can't be on fire anymore. Obama said there's a truce.
It is certainly on fire as we speak. I'm watching a feed out of Kyiv, and I'll tell you.
Yeah, it can't be. Obama said, "quote." He hopes the truce provides space for the sides to resolve their disagreements peacefully. The fire's out, brother. You must be watching old video. It must be time delay.
No, it says live.
Yeah, live, like back on the East Coast.
The long and short is, and the president of the Ukraine announced today, I don't know if he's the president, the czar, the whatever, announced today that their truce talks, or they have a truce going with the opposition. The opposition's upset because they wanted to join the European Union for trade. The opposition being the people versus the government, and they get called the opposition, which I think is kind of funny. But they wanted to join the European Union and expand trade, boost their economy, have better opportunity. And the Ukrainian president, the last minute, pulled out, and from what I understand, it's to be in favor of trading with Russia instead. And you know, because that's a brilliant idea. That's never gone wrong before. And the people, when I say revolted, I think that's probably the most accurate word I can use. The entire downtown area of Kyiv, which is the capital of the Ukraine, they have walls. The opposition of the citizens have a wall of fire going in order to keep the government troops from cracking down on them, because when they cracked down the other day, a lot of people got hurt, and apparently the government was pretty ruthless, which is weird. You'd never think that a government of total control would do something like that, but they beat them pretty nonstop. So it's just amazing. And, you know, I tweeted something out yesterday when I really got caught up on this. I watched it a little bit, but I said, I wonder if anyone in our government is watching me right now and getting nervous. Or even like looking at them like, ooh, I don't want them to get ideas. So if we could not play this in our country right now, that would be great. Because I wouldn't want people to get upset and then think that they have the right to speak out against the government that they don't agree with.
Well, no, because he has a group of civilians that are just as well trained, just as well armed, just as well equipped as the United States military to deal with that. And a stockpile of ammunition. He said it, not me.
Hey, you know what's funny? We mentioned the whole 9 yards earlier, I think, and I did not know this. Do you know where that? I thought one of us said it, but do you know where that
was pre-production?
Oh, either way. Do you know where that term comes from?
No.
Our good friend Flycatch in the chat room said the whole 9 yards. A belt of Browning machine gun ammunition was 9 yards in length. So when people say the whole 9 yards, it means they use the entire belt of ammunition. That is
so. If I say Sean, if you look at me again, I'm going to go the whole 9 yards.
exactly.
That would make perfect sense.
I would ask if I could borrow it first. Because the BAR was pretty awesome. But so
listen, I have 18 yards, and I'm going to give you 9 of those yards.
Thanks. Thank you very much. So I just thought that was interesting. And it's something to watch.
Excuse me, hang on. Hi, Mary.
Clint's saying hi to everyone in the chat room. He thinks
I just said hi to Mary because she gives me the little smiley face and the googly eyes.
And she actually says hi to you.
She says hi to me specifically.
Wow.
Which I appreciate.
I think that's wonderful.
You don't have to roll your eyes. I actually love our listeners.
I absolutely love our listeners.
And then talk down to them.
Wait, what?
Wait.
Hey, I saw an interesting story today, and I'm going to try to pull it up real quick.
We were all over the place. I thought we were talking about Russia burning.
It was,
or the Ukraine burning.
It was the Ukraine, but there really wasn't much more to say about that.
Well, Putin's policies were kind of center stage for this whole thing.
Well, they were.
That's a little important.
Yeah, but if anyone, at this point, if any of our listeners need explaining on how screwed up dealing with Putin is, I don't know if we could cover it all in one show tonight. Like, I don't know if we could actually get them caught up
on it, right?
Okay, fine. Go ahead.
Okay, so perfect photo op for Putin. You ready?
Okay.
Putin stands. Now, just hear me out on this. Putin stands in front of the wall of fire, separating the troops. Right? He's bare-chested,
as he should be,
but in fireman turnouts, just the pants, suspenders over his shoulder, hands on his hips. You ready for this? He's drinking a Coca-Cola. Now, hear me out on this.
I'm hearing you.
An airplane comes overhead, douses water, puts out the flames. Putin is drenched. He drops his Coke. It spills. The plane's flying off, trailing a Pepsi banner and an American flag.
Wow. Well, and let's look at this, because everyone keeps trying, especially our government, keeps trying to hail Russia as these wonderful, we need to be nice to them, we got to trade with them, we got to get along with them, because it's, again, that whole mentality of we have to get along with everyone. Look at Syria.
Hang on, I'm consulting the map that's currently up in the Situation Room behind me.
We know where Syria is. We talked about it the other day. But Syria, Russia brokered that whole chemical weapons deal in Syria, right?
Right.
Just like they're, helping with Iran and North Korea and all this other stuff.
They're big helpers.
And as of late, it looks more and more like Syria is not relinquishing their chemical weapons in the manner that they said they were.
Yep, nobody saw that coming.
Exactly. And Russia isn't really putting any sort of pressure on them. I know they're hosting a party right now.
Nobody saw that coming.
Maybe when the party's over, they'll deal with the anger.
Of course.
The belligerent children. But is it a shock at this point? I mean, I know it's not to me, and maybe I'm crazy. Is it a shock to anyone when Russia says they're going to do something and they don't do it?
Well, it's not a shock to you because you are, in fact, crazy because you're a right-wing extremist. Now.
But why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep going down this road?
Because Obama believes that he believes in global governance. He does. He believes in a world government and a world global cooperation as opposed to American exceptionalism. So he gives a lot of power and yields a lot of the United States power and influence so that other countries can exert influence and so forth, and we come together as a global unit to solve problems, as opposed to, in his opinion, imperialistic United States.
I love how we're oppressive.
Imposing their will. No, but you asked a question, I'm answering it, but that is, I believe, this president's view of the world situation, and his policies and his actions really support that analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, as a direct result of this administration's policies, our country has lost a lot of influence.
A ton of it.
And we've not only lost a lot of influence, but we have given, and friends, we have given a lot of that influence and subsequent power over to really our enemies. Russia being one, Iran being another. A lot of this power and influence is being ceded to those countries. And look, we have China, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit because I don't think we have time to get to it right now. China is preparing for a very short action war with Japan. Look, do you think if Reagan were around, or
any of this would happen?
Or even George W. Bush, do you think China would dare do anything like this, or that Iran or some of these other groups would have these policies in place, or really be spitting in the eye of the United States? I mean, who's Japan's biggest ally?
Us.
Yeah, it's us.
Which is still weird to me, considering that we dropped 2 bombs on them.
Well,
not that long ago, really, in the great scheme of things. But
really, it's like two guys in a bar fight, right? You land a couple of good haymakers, help the guy up off the floor, dust him off, buy him a beer, and you're drinking buddies. That kind of thing.
Except we dropped atom bombs on him. Yeah, it's like a haymaker. It's like the ultimate haymaker, if you will.
Right. And they appreciate the Japanese culture has typically always appreciated the warrior spirit. So, hey, you kicked our butts.
Well,
okay, we like you.
We got to look at it however we possibly can. But yeah, no. If this had happened when Reagan was in office, either one of the Bushes, maybe Clinton, a little bit. But only because
not to this extent. I mean, look,
not to this extent.
Clinton let.
No. I'm saying this would not be happening.
Right. I don't believe this would happen under Clinton.
I don't think so.
I really don't. Clinton had a chance to get Osama bin Laden, and he failed to act timely.
Right.
On that, and I know there were some other issues in some books that came out about his foreign policy or whatnot, but Clinton was not this weak, and after he had some issues during the first couple of years of his presidency, and I know Dick Morris went in to work with his administration, he really moved to the center, and he got things accomplished. He really did, and he worked the other party. But I disagree with Clinton on certain things, obviously, but he's ultra conservative compared to this president.
Yeah, no, it's listen. I mean, we can sit here and beat the dead horse repeatedly, but this specific president is beyond anything we've seen before, and it's getting worse. And for China to start practicing for a war against a close ally of ours, a short strike, quick war, is a horrific sign for how the world is viewing us. Look at Iran has no respect for us. Syria has no respect for us. North Korea has no. They're not even afraid of us anymore. They used to at least be afraid of us, which, right, wrong, or indifferent, it kind of kept them in line. And if we said, hey, leave them alone, it happened. But it never got to the point that we had to. This guy, his foreign policy.
They were scared to us after when Reagan came along.
Oh, yeah.
They were not afraid of us during the Carter.
No, not during Carter, but Kennedy, till Carter, they kind of were, because Kennedy didn't take any crap, and before that, obviously, everyone knew. But, I just think it's absolutely amazing that these countries are starting to kind of posture a little bit more, push a little bit more. It's funny because it's not like our military is all of a sudden awful and terrible and unable to do anything right. It's still the United States military. It's still the strongest military in the world. Best trained troops, the absolute best troops on the face of the planet. Guys that fight and gals that fight because they want to, not because they have to. They're filled with heart and spirit. And these countries are now starting to just poke and prod and see what they can get away with. And it just continues on. And it's sad. It really is sad.
You know what I find sad? Obama has more of an iron fist policy here at home.
Absolutely.
Towards the other branches of government.
Yeah.
And towards the citizens of this country than he does towards foreign governments or to foreign citizens who are here in violation of our laws. That's what I find scary. I find that scarier than even our influence in other parts of the globe.
Well, but it's a totality thing, and that's the issue. If North Korea was the only ones being belligerent in any way, shape, or form and making these threats that are off the wall, whatever, All right, it's North Korea. They've been doing it for years, and we know how they operate. We know that they're just a bunch of blowhards over there. But when you have other countries start doing it, then it becomes an issue, and it shows overall. And that's what I mean. It's the total. It's not these little individual things. It's like this president as a whole, even on domestic policy. You don't look at the individual per se. They become part of the equation, but it's the totality. It's not that one executive action,
of course,
but it's all of them together.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the things that people miss.
It paints a picture.
It does,
right? Because you get one thing, and then it's dismissed as whatever. You get other thing, it's dismissed as, well, the Republicans aren't doing it. Well, the House isn't doing it. Well, we don't really want to go to war with Iran, so we need to cede some things to them. Well, yeah, Russia can do the thing with Syria, and well, Homeland Security, yeah, they're not really harboring armored vehicles and lots of ammunition. And what Viper teams? No, why wouldn't TSA be on trains and have armed law enforcement response there? And it's one thing after another. Oh, the president doesn't need Congress, and now you have some Democrat in the House saying, yeah, we encourage you to go around Congress.
Yeah, and then you have Holder.
Almost at a loss.
Then you have Holder, and there's a great piece on Breitbart in a video from the whole 11-minute video between Mike Lee and Holder. Holder can't even explain some of the executive actions, why they're legal and how. He did a lot.
Not.
I know.
Because it's not.
You would think that's like a pre-practice response, at least a line of BS.
But how can
and he stuttered and stammered through, which is just stunning to me.
It is so blatantly illegal.
Well, yeah.
And the fact that they don't care.
No.
They don't care, and that is why, look, I understand that impeachment is really saved for some extreme circumstances.
It's time to get to that point, though,
typically. But look, you had Clinton, who was impeached over lying about a blowjob. You had Nixon, who wasn't impeached, but he was resigned over a burglary. And you have a president now who's really seizing power, in a way, kind of gathering a lot of power into one branch, the executive, and sidestepping, going around over through Congress, trampling the Constitution and failing to uphold the laws, to faithfully execute the laws of this country. I think that you have some serious issues there. I mean, those to me are serious charges. If you have an executive that's garnering so much power, and it's in clear direct violation of our Constitution, it's a clear overreach, and it really is tyranny. And you start looking at now, some people roll their eyes when you throw that term out, but look at what it means. You have one person who's garnering this much power. We fought a war over this. And the encroachments that we're seeing, in some cases, are worse than some of the ones that were seen during the time of the American Revolution, the American quest for independence.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So how
I wish I could rebut or add something that you
I don't think
but
you can. I think I think we are at a point where you have impeachable offenses against this president. I think he is in clear violation. I think there is a danger of us really kind of going down the road of a dictatorship. And again, some people roll their eyes, but look at how other people throughout history have seized power away from a duly elected body of government. And I mean, you can point to ancient Rome. You can point to the Third Reich. And again, I'm not saying that anybody's going to that Obama's going to round people up and put them in gas chambers or anything like that. But I'm talking about just how power was seized and put into a central form of government, or a central person, really. In our case, it would be an executive, and how the written word of law was really overcome and rewritten, reworked. I mean, it's happened before. Are we really so naive to think that it can't happen here? And
there are some that are that naive.
They are, but and a lot of people are. But it'll never happen here. But I submit that you look at how much power has been garnered, and how it's been garnered, how that power has been wielded, and while it hasn't happened yet, we're in danger. I mean, we really are. Not to sound melodramatic, but we're in danger. How much of our freedom and our individual liberties are we willing to give up for the sake of the illusion of security? How secure are you really if a president can issue an executive order overriding a particular constitutional requirement or overriding a law that Congress passed?
That's the thing. Just to be able to, or just not do anything at all. Just say, hey, I don't want this done at all. Hey, we're up against a break because Sacco's throwing stuff at us, and we went a couple minutes over.
Sacco,
I
seriously?
apologize. You know, Mary brought up a good point.
Weren't talking about something important.
A good point before we go to break is Mary just said, you know, on top of tyranny, break. Thanks, Sacco. We also have a do-nothing Congress to go with it. So, and it's true. That combination has been just absolutely brutal for this country. 347-205-9399 is our phone number. We're going to take a break. Tammy J should be calling in any time now here on the Sackheads Radio Show. We are absolutely excited about that. We'll be back in 3.
Hey, if you care about what's going on in the world, you cannot afford to miss my show. Hi, this is Andrea Kay, your host of The Andrea Kay Show. It's not always about the money. Okay, it is always about the money, but it's also about politics, pop culture, and you. The only thing street about this show is the smarts. There's a reason they call me Dynamite in a Dress. And you'll find out why when you listen Tuesday mornings at 10 on Financial News and Talk.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state. America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, and that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean the government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens. This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
Hey folks, it's Sean from Sackheads Radio. As a native Bostonian, my heart broke on April 15, 2013, watching those horrendous attacks at the Boston Marathon. Now there's a way that you can help. Go to onefunboston.org, ONEFUNDBOSTON.org, where you can donate to help the victims and families from this awful attack. Onefunboston.org, all the proceeds will go directly to the victim's family. Thank you very much from Sackheads Radio.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
Hey, we're back here on the Sackheads Radio Show, 347-205-9399. We are waiting for our good friend Tammy J to call in. Sacco, if you could fix your messes, that'd be great. I'm just saying, you kind of created this problem,
Do we have a problem?
Well, yeah.
Is this thing on?
Welcome back.
Did you mute my microphone again?
Oh. Hey, Sacco.
Is that an alien spaceship?
Sacco, can you look at me, please? And hopefully this works. Hey, it's Tammy. How are you? We are here. Unfortunately, you're not there for some reason. Sacco's working on the finalized sound engineering on this, but you're not carrying over. So can we call you back in a minute? Okay, thank you.
Is this because we moved?
It is because we're moved. It's all jacked up, but we'll get to the bottom of it.
You mean Sacco'd up? I don't even. We fired Jack, if you remember, because Sacco's resume was so much better.
You know, one of the most that's a terrible idea to fire Jack. Thank you, Sacco. You know, it's great when your guest for the night, the person that you pushed, he can't even make that work. So. Hey, there was another article while we're trying to figure this out that popped up to me today, and I just kind of want to talk about it real brief, is that the two Americans that were the former Navy SEALs were found dead on the Maersk, Alabama.
Yes, the ship from Captain Phillips.
Yeah.
The Somali Pirates ordeal.
Yeah, and you know, not much information's coming out. They weren't on duty. They weren't under attack. But it's just really bizarre. The two former Navy SEALs, and I hope it wasn't something,
And the circumstances weren't very clear.
Right. That's the thing, that nobody's giving any information at all. It wasn't like, hey, unfortunately it was a carbon monoxide poisoning or something like that, where you're like, oh, well, it's obviously a tremendous tragedy, but okay, it's understandable. This can happen anywhere. This was just complete, hey, yeah, two Navy SEALs passed, and we're not telling you why.
Yeah, not, hey, they were found with gunshot wounds, not, hey, they were ambushed. I mean, nothing. There's
that boat is bad news.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just spitballing here.
Okay.
When was the last time anybody has seen the Flying Dutchman? Look, I'm not saying that this ship is the Flying Dutchman. I'm just saying that the Flying Dutchman and this ship have never been seen together.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. You're 100% right. Those two have never been seen in the same place.
Okay.
It's just a tragedy. And especially they're there. I think they're with a company called Trident, and they're essentially, I think that's a government-run company or a government.
It's a contract company.
Yeah, government contracting company, and they're providing security to these ships. So, it really is sad, and I hope they give us a little bit more information about that, because it's going to be interesting to see what exactly happened.
So, look, we talked briefly about China, and the fact that they've been practicing for a war with Japan. There is a U.S. Navy intelligence analyst that told some colleagues that the China's People's Liberation Army, the PLA, that they've been conducting these training exercises, incorporating a scenario in which China's military takes over the Senkaku Islands, which are located near Taiwan. And there's a Captain James, I believe it's Spannel. It's pronounced Deputy Chief of Staff Intelligence and Information Operations for the U.S. Pacific Fleet, said that, quote, we witnessed massive amphibious and cross-military region enterprise. Again, quote, we concluded that the PLA has been given the new task to be able to conduct a short, sharp war to destroy Japanese forces in the East China Sea, followed with what can be expected seizure of the Senkaku or even a southern Ryukyu Island, at least some of their academics say. So again, I saw this article, and FoxNews.com has a really good version of the article, and they had some of these quotes from Captain Fannel, and it's really scary. I know we touched on it earlier, but if you have China that's really practicing and undertaking a quote short, sharp war with Japan, first of all, how do we stop that? Because look, we have to be committed, right? If Japan's attacked and Japan goes to war, and they lose these islands, the U.S. would have to get involved. Correct?
Well, yeah, because that's. I mean,
they are a very close ally of ours.
Right. There's a reason why we're stationed in Okinawa. We have been for years. There's a reason why we have such close trade. So they are a close ally.
Look, and how far is China willing to go? What are their? We know they have severe energy needs.
Yeah.
If they take those islands and they are occupying portions of Japan, why did the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor? Why did the Japanese draw the United States into the war? So
we would rebuild them?
Right, because they knew we were going to completely kick their ass. Look, Japan needed energy.
Right.
Japan needed energy, and the United States was embargoing them, and
they needed to end that.
They had policies in place that were really making it difficult for Japan to get the resources they need. So they felt they had no choice other than to attack the United States. Now, if portions of Japan are occupied by China, does China have the ability to reach the Hawaiian Islands and deal a critical blow to look almost like a Pearl Harbor 2, right? Well, because where would Japan's support be coming from? It'd be coming from Pearl. That's where a large portion of the Pacific. So Pearl, and you have some at I believe you have a carrier group in San Diego, right? So if China is able to take those islands in Japan, are they able? And I don't know their capability. Are they able to reach out and touch the Hawaiian Islands to disable the U.S. fleet there to prohibit a U.S. response? I mean, we're drawing in, right?
Let's look at this first of all. Let's say they do this quick strike on Japan, right? Mm-hmm. And that shows that they're really starting to press the waters, and they're really starting to press out. What's next? Are the Philippines next? Because they're right there. I don't know if they're going to try to jump the water that quick. But will they get a couple of key places where they're our allies? You know, they're going after our allies to test our response. And then if they get a foothold in both countries...
I don't think they're testing our response. I think these are the islands that have kind of been in dispute for a long time.
Right.
But the fact that they're recognized as part of Japan...
Oh, no, I understand. But I'm just saying, you know, you have to look at their game, you know, and where they're going to go and what they're kind of try to do. Or what if they say, oh yeah, by the way, we have the northern part of Japan back in, 18, whatever.
Uh-huh.
And then, so they're like, well, we have to try that too. And then, let's get on to, somebody brought up in the chat room, Taiwan. You know, what if they really start getting that ball rolling? If they start doing kind of what Russia did, and all of a sudden they start taking all these islands that used to be involved in China, part of China natural, to try to reclaim them.
Mm-hmm.
And expand further and further and further. And then you start talking about their oil needs. I mean, let's say they're the biggest consumer of gasoline next to us. If not, I think they may have surpassed us in the world.
Well, China has spent over $1.5 million to improve certain facilities in the South China Sea. They've developed ports. They've had surveillance systems put into place, water purification systems. I think they put in some airfields. Why are they building that up? And look, the U.S. has been trying to strengthen our ties with China,
right,
including military ties with China.
Yes.
So does China think we're so weak that we're not going to provide any kind of counterattack, or do they believe we're more allies? They own X amount of our debt, so we're really not going to do anything. I don't know. Or, hey, you know what?
That's the thing.
If you do something, we have the ability to reach out and touch your Pacific fleet as well. I don't know. But it's scary to me. And look, I understand that China is really kind of an up and coming global power, right?
Right.
They're like they're the rookie.
They're not really even, but not anymore. They're actually a global power now. We've allowed them to become a global power.
Right, but they're new. they're like new money.
Yeah, but
right?
they've always been big and had power. Now they're just global.
No, they've had local,
right?
But they have not had global power, right? So now they're like new money. They're like the kind of the rookie, right? Kind of feeling as though it's a little bit. And so is this? I don't know. Is this just kind of a hey, look what we are capable of, so don't mess with us? Is this legitimate plans? Because I know they've had war games against Taiwan in the past, and look, they've never invaded Taiwan. So now why the shift now from Taiwan to the Senkaku Islands, or both? And I know there have been incidents where there was an incident where a Chinese naval vessel locked its radar targeting system onto a Japanese warship.
Yep.
And there was obviously a big outcry from Japan, and rightfully so, on that. But a war with China scares me.
Well, it does, and I again, this isn't. I don't think that they would take us out handedly, but they have so many bodies. No, they have decent capability.
They do, and they have a huge population.
Right.
I don't think they would have us militarily. But I think we have Tammy.
I think we finally have Tammy. Tammy, I'm so sorry.
Tammy, look, I'm sorry we had to get to that story first before we were able to bring you in. But we appreciate you staying on hold for us while we kind of talk business here, because there was absolutely nothing wrong. Everything is going exactly according to plan. We have complete control over everything, and so we thank you for bearing with us and holding out while we forced that breaking news in.
Thank you very much, Tammy. You're a trooper, I'll tell you.
It's like, okay, if they really didn't want to talk to me, they could have told me. I would not have been mad.
No, are you kidding me?
You know, Tammy, and we were just literally having a tug of war, like two puppies on a chew toy, where Sean was saying, no, we have too much material, let's dump Tammy. And I was like, are you out of your mind? We love Tammy. And we were going back and forth while you were on hold.
I'm not going to respond to this
I just
right
want
now.
you to know the truth, and I have video to prove it.
I'm not even going to respond to this, Tammy, because you know better. I would hope you know better. I pay you to know better.
I do. It's fun, though.
Why are you
and poor Sacco is all hoarse
pay?
and everything.
Well, and he's trying to talk. I know, and we've been rough on him. It's funny. His voice was fine when he came to work today, but after we did the final touches on the studio, and Clint and I yelled at him for about 2 hours straight.
And he was yelling at all the chords that he had mixed up. Which a lot of the
what did you guys
chords
do to your studio?
We ended up we moved studios, so we're in a new studio now.
We're actually in a government building because we figured that this is the last place they'd look for us. We're practically in the state capitol, which is awesome because they have no idea we're here.
So we had to move everything, and in doing that, we upgraded a few things and changed some things around. And we thought we got most of the kinks out of it. However, that didn't happen.
Apparently,
but the kink that allows you to talk to Tammy J wasn't fixed.
Well, for whatever reason, we thought the Skype, the way our setup is, so we can get people in on Skype as well as on the phone, is we had to jump a few things, and it didn't quite go the way we had planned. Yeah. And that's why Sacco's voice is like that. Have you ever cried for a really long time, Sammy? and when after a while your throat just gets hoarse from crying and just being upset, that's what we did to him, and I apologize for that.
You guys are horrible.
No.
Hey, Sacco, dry your eyes. Dry your eyes. Back away from the microphone. Nobody can hear you anyways.
It's all right, sobbing Sally. Don't worry about it.
Sobbing Sacco.
He needs to call John Grant and have John Grant walk him through the Skype configuration.
And Sacco, dry. It's okay for men to cry.
Well, Tammy, it's one of those things that we had everything set up, and when we moved, we upgraded, and we just, you thought you worked out all the bugs, but not always. Clint's still here.
Yep, that's the way it goes. That's okay. You'll figure it out.
That hurts. He can fix that. Oh, I'm 1/3 owner with these other two guys. They can't.
You're right. It'll just take a 2/3 vote, and right now Sacco's mad at you. So, hey,
we love Sacco.
You know, Tammy, the reason you grace us with your presence is you released part 3 today.
Finally, finally. Oh my goodness.
In the wake of Hillary Clinton, and you know, we talked a little bit on Twitter earlier. If everyone hasn't checked it out, go to theblacksphere.net. It's right up there, and read the first 2 sections first, and then you get to the third. We start rolling through, and you know, sadly, the first couple, Tammy, I was like, all right, well, unfortunately, it's not shocking. Like, it didn't shock me. There was no shock in all the first
it's just a person that died, and it's a little bit of a strange way they died, but, you know, it's nothing that really grabs you.
Right. And you know, I don't know if it was, okay, well, this is just weird, or, okay, well, they knew the Clintons, and at this point it kind of makes sense that they died early. But then...
then you get to page 7.
Yeah. Then you get to page 7. In page 7, and that's funny that you brought it up because I actually had it here on my notes, Kevin Ives and Don Henry. And I want you to tell this story yourself. People can read it. Please go to the website and read it. And you know, make sure you know how awesome Tammy is. But kind of go into this a little bit for our listeners and see if you can explain it and what importance this has and why this is a big one.
Well, this is a really big one. Now, a couple pages prior to that, I have Barry Seal on there, and that's it. That leads up to this because Barry Seal was somebody that there were reports that he worked for the CIA and did things for the government. He was known as a drug runner, and the drug running went in. It started in Louisiana, but then they changed it to an airport in Mena, Arkansas. And it was well known that drugs were being run in and out of there. Barry Seal supposedly ran billions of dollars of drugs in and out of the United States. We don't know what the relationship was to drug cartels, but we do know that it was happening there in Mena, Arizona. And the allegations are that the Clintons knew far well that this was going on. So, when you get to page 7, and there's Kevin Ives and Don Henry, and those names don't maybe sound like what people would think of as kids right away, but they were 2 nice, clean-cut teenagers. I believe they were 14 and 15. They went out for a night of deer hunting in a rural area of Saline County, Arkansas, and no big deal. In these rural areas, kids like that and their dads, kids by themselves, they go out hunting at night all the time. There used to be no danger whatsoever. It was a very wholesome thing to be doing. And they did not come home the next morning. Their bodies were found run over by a Union Pacific train on train tracks. Thus it became known as the Boys on the Tracks case. And it became very, very famous. What's interesting is that the Arkansas State Medical Examiner, the ME, said that they had fallen asleep. They probably had been smoking pot and were in a deep slumber, and the train ran over them. Well, their mother didn't buy that. I don't think she believed that they smoked pot or anything, and the idea that they could fall asleep on train tracks, that just makes no sense. I don't care. I've never tried smoking pot and then sleeping on train tracks, but it just sounds unbelievable. And so,
who can sleep through a Union Pacific train rumbling down the tracks?
Yeah.
I mean, that
let alone being on the track. I don't care what you smoke. Yeah, unless you've had an anesthesiologist attend you, I just don't think that's going to happen. And so this began to raise just a lot of questions with people, and a grand jury started investigating. They had the bodies exhumed, and then another autopsy said, no, wait a minute, Don Henry had been stabbed in the back and was dead when the train ran over him, and Kevin Ives had been beaten with a rifle butt, and the boys were most likely murdered in an area known as the drop zone for the drug smugglers. So they were murdered, left on the tracks. Yep. And Clinton brought in 2 pathologists to check out the ME's work, and they had the state crime lab, be there where the autopsies were being conducted. But when the grand jury wanted to subpoena those experts for testimony, Clinton refused it. And, there was a book that was written about the case, which is really interesting. I've only read some of it, but it was written by Mara Leverett, and everybody that read it said, oh my goodness, this is like a John Grisham novel come to life. This is true facts. And she really investigated well and worked with Kevin Ives' mom, and very interesting book. The case became really, really well known and associated with the Clintons. And I say, the thing that really nags at me is why did Clinton refuse to allow the records from the crime lab and the ME, in the posthumous exam? Why did he refuse to release those records? That's pretty crazy. And then what's interesting is the following pages after the Boys on the Track case were a couple people that knew the boys. One of them was Keith Coney. He was a friend of the boys and supposedly was near when they were being attacked. He had told his mom, and so this came out in testimony. He was killed. He was on his motorcycle, and there was a high-speed chase, and he ended up running into the back of a truck. And then another fellow knew about what had happened and seemed to have some information, and he was talking around town that his life wasn't worth 2 cents. And the night that he said that, and the night that he had said goodbye to all his family members, that night he was stabbed 113 times. So
holy moly.
Yeah, so it's just, and this is the kind of stuff that's in the Clintons' past, and some of it gets really close to them as we go through all these names of these bodies, and some of them, it just gives you a bad feeling, like, wait a minute, because you start seeing where, Bill and Hillary were in the background of these different things and how they were connected. And I mean, he was the governor of the state, and Arkansas is not like being there in New York City or someplace. It's a smaller, a lot of rural population. People know what's going on. They know everybody's business. Everybody knew what was going on at Mina. And, and these poor boys were murdered and had parents that never got answers. So that's just kind of reminds me of Benghazi, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, well, like everything else, if it doesn't meet the agenda, part of the reason why that's important is you talk about Beale in that area, but the way those two are connected is there was a mechanic that was working on his car that found a check that was somehow related to Bill Clinton, and that never went anywhere, but that mechanic ended up perishing as well. And,
so it seems like anybody that knew anything is just gone. And I have to tell you guys, I have, I've received a lot of emails, and I've received emails from people that were in that area that knew people related to all these